If Marvel Cosmic Invasion hooked you, and honestly, how could it not, then you already know what a modern beat-em-up looks like when done right. The precise combat, the chaos on screen, that feeling of simply shredding through hordes of enemies with your favorite heroes, it hits different. And when a game grabs you like that, you start looking around and thinking, okay, what else is out there giving me this same rush? That's exactly why we're here today. I went digging through some of the freshest titles out there and found 10 new games that scratch that exact same itch. I'm Mary, and the video is about to start. You know that feeling of wanting a beat-em-up that gets straight to the point, no fluff, just good old-fashioned brawling? Then you need to put Takeover 2 on your radar right now. Developed and published by Pelican 13, this is an indie game that makes no apologies. It arrives with the goal of being one of the most impactful arcade beat-em-ups of recent years, and from what I played in the demo, it's coming in hot. Takeover 2 is the direct sequel to The Takeover, released back in 2019 by the same Pelican 13. And they didn't sleep on the job. They took everything that worked in the original and tossed out what didn't. The result is a completely overhauled combat system with tighter controls, much more depth, and a sense of hit response that makes you feel every punch on the screen. Visually, the graphics have been updated, and the new soundtrack is the kind that sticks in your head while you're wrecking enemies on the streets of Steelhaven. What truly impressed me about the combat was the absurd variety of tools the game puts in your hands. You've got combo chains, parry mechanics, special attacks, finishing moves, and crowd control strategies, and these aren't just for show. You need to master each element to earn S-rank ratings and survive the higher difficulty modes. And there's a detail I loved. The entire environment is a weapon. Buckets, cones, tires, basically anything you see in the stage, you can pick up and smash over someone's head, giving a satisfying sense of creativity to every encounter. The game comes with 3 main modes, covering completely different audiences. Arcade mode is the classic campaign with progressive stages full of hordes and intense boss battles. Challenge mode is where things get really interesting. You choose your own route through the stages with specific objectives and star ratings based on your performance. This requires a level of precision and efficiency that will truly test the best players. To top it off, there are even 2 bonus minigames: Jet Fury, a fighter jet game focused on survival and scoring, and Super Street Racer, a retro arcade-style race where second place means nothing. Takeover 2 is set for release on September 10th, 2026 on Steam, featuring 2-player local co-op. So let that friend know, because this is exactly the type of game made to be played side by side with someone shouting in the living room. The demo is already available for free on Steam with 4 playable stages, so there's no excuse not to try it before launch. If Marvel Cosmic Invasion reminded you why beat-em-ups are incredible, Takeover 2 is the natural next step, only with a raw, more aggressive, and completely independent vibe, proving you don't need a superhero license to make a respectable brawl. Developed by Art of Play, an independent Australian studio based in Melbourne, Lady Death Demonicron was born from a partnership with Cawthon Comics and the character's creator himself, Brian Pulido, meaning this isn't just some random cash grab adaptation. It's a team that genuinely loves the source material and wants to do it justice. Lady Death Demonicron is a 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up with 15 stages, and the developer's stated inspiration is a mix of Streets of Rage, Golden Axe, and Mortal Kombat, all tossed into one pot, with a heavy 90s industrial metal soundtrack completing the atmosphere. The character Lady Death wakes up at the gates of a demonic prison with no memory of what happened and is immediately attacked by hordes of infernal creatures. And that's where the game throws you straight into the action without ceremony.
The script is canon to the comic book universe, so fans of the HQ will recognize elements and characters that are part of the character's official lore. The combat system is where the game truly shines. Lady Death has around 60 moves available, including sword attacks, magic, grapples, finishing moves, and screen-clearing area attacks when you activate your power bar. The finishers are bloody in all the right ways. Depending on how you take down an enemy, they might explode, catch fire, or literally spill their guts across the stage. It's the kind of absurd detail that makes you experiment with different combinations just to see what happens. Visually, the backgrounds are all hand-drawn with art that perfectly captures that dark, exaggerated aesthetic of 90s horror comics. The project was funded via Kickstarter and hit its goal, which says a lot about the level of dedication from the community surrounding the character and the game. Pre-orders are already open on the official website, and the game is expected to arrive on Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 5, Xbox, and Steam, so there's no platform excuse to ignore this title. It even has multiplayer, meaning you can grab someone to sit on the couch next to you and raise hell in co-op. Look, Lady Death Demonicron doesn't have a definitive confirmed release date yet, but the demo already exists and shows that the game has a visual identity and combat weight that few indie beat-em-ups can deliver. If Marvel Cosmic Invasion reminded you how satisfying it is to destroy hordes of enemies with style in a 2-8 game, this one takes that formula into darker, more visceral, and much grittier territory, and that is a huge compliment. It's the kind of game a self-respecting beat-em-up fan needs to have on their radar, and when it drops, it'll be an experience you'll remember for a long time. If you enjoyed Marvel Cosmic Invasion and were left with an insatiable hunger for more beat-em-ups with personality, let me introduce you to a title that blends 90s nostalgia with modern gameplay in a way few games can. Toxic Crusaders, developed by Retroware, the same studio behind games like Boogerman and other revisited classics, released in December 2025 for PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch. This game is based on the 90s animated series of the same name, which in turn is derived from Troma Entertainment's iconic Toxic Avenger, and yes, it is exactly as crazy and fun as you're imagining. The game puts you in control of one of 7 playable characters: Toxie, No Zone, Junkyard, Major Disaster, Headbanger, Yvonne, and Mrs. Junko, and each of them has completely distinct moves, weapons, and special attacks, so you won't just pick your favorite and repeat the same loops. The goal is to clean the streets of Tromaville from the clutches of the villain Dr. Killamoff and his Smogulin empire, facing hordes of radiation rangers, mutant goons, and, my favorite part, zombie chickens. Yes, zombie chickens. This game is not ashamed to be completely absurd, and that's exactly what makes it so special. The visuals are colorful and lively pixel art, with that vibrant, exaggerated palette that perfectly matches the slapstick aesthetic of the original cartoon. The cinematics are animated comics with full voice acting by Team 4-Star, the group famous for Dragon Ball Z Abridged, so even the cutscenes have that comedic energy that makes you stop skipping just to watch. The soundtrack is one of those that throws you right back to 1992, with that energetic sound that won't leave your head even hours after you close the game. The combat has good depth for a beat-em-up. You chain punches, throws, and special moves, use the environment to your advantage with traps and explosive barrels scattered throughout the levels, and you can still count on team special moves when playing in co-op. Speaking of which, local co-op for up to 4 players is the heart of the game. You can revive fallen allies, share power-ups, and coordinate that team super move at the right time to completely turn the tide of a difficult battle. It's the kind of experience that is good solo, but explodes in quality when you get 3 friends on the same couch. If Marvel Cosmic Invasion reminded you what it's like to have a beat-em-up that respects the source material while delivering satisfying gameplay, Toxic Crusaders goes a step further by fully embracing the madness of its source universe and turning it into an advantage. It's not the most serious game in the world, and it doesn't try to be. It wants you to laugh, to play like a 90s kid, and to feel that simple, pure pleasure of clearing a screen full of enemies with a radioactive mop. And look, sometimes that's exactly what we need.
We were just heading there now. Although that's a little harsh, perhaps.
Hey, he's getting away! And before we can bring him to justice for all his evil schemes and stuff.
Don't sweat it, No Zone. Looks like Killamov's heading into the Tromaville Health Club. We can bring him to justice and work on our glutes at the same time.
You leave my glute out of this.
Good thinking, Fender. A healthy planet starts with a healthy...
Look, I need to be honest with you first. Underground World War isn't a side-scrolling beat-em-up like Marvel Cosmic Invasion. But if you enjoyed the feeling of mastering a character with their own style, unique combos, and that each fighter plays differently vibe, then this game has everything to hook you just the same. Developed and published by Underworld Interactive, Underground World War is a fighting game directly inspired by the Def Jam series. And if you didn't grow up with Def Jam Fight for NY in the 2000s, know that you missed one of the best fighting games in history. And this one wants to bring that exact vibe back with a fresh look. The story starts in a way that hooks you immediately. Dozens of underground artists from around the world gather for a showcase that could change their lives. And what was supposed to be a historic night turns into a massacre. You, a rising artist, take such a brutal beating that you fall into a coma, and when you wake up 3 years later, the entire underground scene has collapsed into violence, with street battles replacing the stages, and fear taking the place of fame. You return to the screen not just for revenge, but to understand who started all this, and this narrative of betrayal and ambition in a system corrupted by power is exactly the kind of story that keeps you playing beyond the initial hype. The combat system is where the game truly sets itself apart. You can create your own fighter from scratch with full customization of appearance and fighting style, or choose from real underground rappers who are part of the cast, and each brings a completely different style to the arena. What caught my eye was the environmental mechanics. You can throw enemies against barriers, walls, and gates, and use the surrounding crowd as a combat element. The audience can push fighters back into the fray, hold them, leaving them open for attacks, offer weapons, or even attack themselves. And speaking of weapons, pipes, bottles, baseball bats, and much more are scattered across the stage for those who prefer fighting dirty. The game has battle modes that cater to various types of players: 1v1 showdowns to test pure skill, 2v2 team battles, and the free-for-all mode where total chaos reigns and everyone fights everyone at once. The rage system is another highlight worth mentioning. You build up this bar by performing moves, landing counters, and taunting your opponent, and when it activates, your fighter enters a state of heightened brutality that can completely flip a fight that seemed lost. The latest beta build has already added a new arena, the Abandoned Warehouse, and 6 more playable rappers, showing that the team is active and committed to development. Underground World War is set for early access release on Steam in the second quarter of 2026, and from what the beta version already delivers, the potential is huge. If Marvel Cosmic Invasion reminded you that fighting games with their own identity and memorable characters are special when the studio puts heart into the project, Underground World War is clearly trying to do the same, only in the universe of underground hip-hop, betrayal, and street battles. It's a game worth your attention, especially if you want something different in your action playlist while waiting for the next big genre releases. You know when you look at a game for the first time and think, this shouldn't work this well? That's exactly the feeling I had when I came across Unregret, developed by Road to Healing and published by Ratalaika Games, a 2D beat-em-up that gets straight to the point from the very first scene without asking for permission. The game introduces you to Butch, an office worker completely fed up with the gray routine, annoying colleagues, and suffocating office life. And in a moment of complete nervous breakdown, a simple, ordinary workday transforms into bloody chaos. Butch's story is absurd in the most honest and fun way possible. After snapping, he decides there's no turning back, leaves everything behind, and sets off on a journey through the most dangerous and dark corners of the country with one single goal in life: to reach Hollywood and become an actor. I know, it sounds crazy. And it is. This completely wild script is what keeps the narrative fresh across the game's 20 stages, because you never know what absurd situation will pop up on the next screen. Each level is packed with strange characters, bizarre conflicts, and that constant feeling that Butch is a guy who literally has nothing left to lose. And this shows in every punch you land on enemies. The combat system is built around combinations of strikes, grapples, and finishers that flow naturally as you learn the timing of each enemy. What impressed me was the variety of more than 20 types of available weapons, both melee and firearms, but with a very important detail. Weapons wear out and ammunition runs out, so you can't just pick up a machine gun and pray for the game to end quickly. This forces you to use the environment to your advantage and constantly adapt your fighting style depending on what's available in the stage, giving a very satisfying tactical depth for those who like combat with weight. The bosses deserve special mention because they aren't just common enemies with more HP. Each of them is an encounter designed to break your fighting rhythm and demand total attention to their behavior and attack patterns. You won't get past them through brute force alone, and that's great because it makes every victory over a boss feel genuinely earned. And for those who finish the campaign and want to keep testing themselves, there's the Infinite Arena mode, where waves of enemies get progressively more aggressive and dangerous. It's the type of mode that separates those who mastered the combat from those who just breeze through the game on autopilot. All of this is wrapped in a soundtrack that blends electronic music and punk rock in a way that perfectly matches the aggression and madness happening on screen. It's the kind of sound that gets your blood pumping at the right time and keeps you in the rhythm of the brawl. If Marvel Cosmic Invasion gave you that satisfaction of a beat-em-up with a clear visual identity and a varied cast of enemies that requires constant adaptation, Unregret delivers that exact same feeling, but with a completely original story, a human and imperfect protagonist, and a raw, unfiltered energy that reminds you why this genre is still so addictive. The demo has been available for free on Steam since January 2026, so there's no excuse. Go test it before the full release.
Let me introduce you to Garuda Emblem, an indie project developed by Team Battalion in collaboration with Fifth Floor and published by Comma 49. I was surprised from the first minute I got my hands on the demo. The game takes place on the Union University campus, and you control Fareed, a freshman on his first day of classes who suddenly finds himself in the middle of an invasion by armed gangsters set on destroying everything. And what was supposed to be a quiet registration day quickly turns into a 90s action movie in the most wonderful and chaotic way possible. What makes Garuda Emblem different from practically every other beat-em-up I've played recently is the open world premise within a genre that usually pushes you forward in a straight line.
You can freely explore the campus, talk to NPCs, accept side quests, discover hidden secrets, and even go through a day-night cycle while unraveling the mysteries surrounding Fareed. This transforms the game into a beat-em-up with a genuine RPG layer, where progression goes beyond moving from stage to stage. You develop your character through a skill tree and customize your equipment depending on your fighting style. The combat is one of the game's high points and delivers that satisfaction of weight and responsiveness a beat-em-up needs to work. The dynamic combo mechanic system allows for Fareed to chain basic attacks, special abilities, grapples, and area strikes into a fluid sequence that gets more varied as you learn new skills and battles. And you know what I liked most? The environment is completely interactive. Chairs, tables, trash cans, anything in your way can become a weapon, and the stages have traps you can use creatively to turn the tide of a difficult encounter. The characters in the game have a very strong visual identity thanks to the completely hand-drawn sprites. Every character, background, effect, and animation was drawn manually by the studio, which gives the game an artistic charm few indies manage to achieve. Besides Fareed, you can also play as Ronnie, and the possibility of local or online co-op for up to 3 players turns the campus chaos into an even more fun mess when you invite someone to play along. There are also mini-games scattered throughout the experience that serve as a breather between battles, showing the studio understands that a good beat-em-up needs to vary the pace to avoid fatigue. Garuda Emblem is scheduled for release in 2026 on Steam, and the demo is already available on both itch.io and the platform, so you can test it right now before the full release. If Marvel Cosmic Invasion reminded you that a beat-em-up with personality and soul can be a memorable experience, Garuda Emblem is exactly the type of indie game that will stay in your memory long after you close the final stage, with that rare mix of comedy, heart, quality brawling, and a world that genuinely invites you to explore. It's the kind of project you want to see succeed, because it's clear there's real passion in every hand-drawn pixel of this game. I know Marvel Cosmic Invasion reminded you how satisfying an action game with fluid combat, a strong character identity, and that cinematic feeling of every fight being a visual spectacle can be. And if that's what you're looking for at the next level, let me introduce you to Spine, developed and published by Neki, the same creators of the Shadow Fight series and the game Vector, and it's coming to PC, PS5, Xbox Series, and Nintendo Switch 2. Spine isn't a side-scrolling beat-em-up like Cosmic Invasion, but the intensity of the combat, the fluidity of movement, and the cinematic approach make this game an experience any genre fan will absorb with the same energy. The protagonist is Redline, a rebellious graffiti artist who receives a spinal implant with its own artificial intelligence, the spine from the title, which transforms her into a combat machine and serves as her companion throughout the journey. Her mission is to rescue her brother, captured by the autocratic AI regime known as Tensor, facing street gangsters, mob bosses, and trained assassins with implants as powerful as hers along the way. What caught me in the story is that each mission was designed as a standalone short film, with unique cinematic environments that make the world of Spawning feel alive and coherent, even while being dystopian and brutal. The combat is the heart of the game and deserves special attention because it's where Spine truly differentiates itself from everything on the market. The concept is Gun Fu, a fusion of martial arts, close-range shooting, and action movie choreography, where Redline chains punches, kicks, dodges, and shots into fluid combos that look like real-time John Wick scenes. You can snatch weapons from enemies mid-fight, use spray paint to momentarily blind opponents, and the game features parkour and acrobatic elements that make every encounter a beautiful, controlled mess to watch. The technology behind the visuals is impressive. The game runs on Unreal Engine 5 with custom shaders and Necky's proprietary 3D animation software called Cascadeur, which was specifically developed to capture realistic physics in combat movements. The result is character animation that feels organic and heavy in just the right way. You feel the impact of every hit, every fall, and every acrobatic barrel roll Rebline executes, elevating the experience to a level few indie or AA action games can deliver. The art director made a point to move away from classic retro cyberpunk and bet on a more modern and contemporary tone, almost like a warning about what can happen with AI technology. And this gives the game a visual identity that stands out immediately. Spine was announced in August 2021 and underwent a complete concept overhaul in December 2023, when Necky abandoned the original PvP idea and repositioned the game as a single-player narrative focused on fast combat and dense story. And that was clearly the right decision. If Marvel Cosmic Invasion reminded you that action games with soul and care for every combat detail are rare and precious, Spine is exactly the kind of game that will give you that same feeling, but in a 3D, visceral, and cinematic package that goes straight to the heart of those who love quality action. It's well worth putting on your wish list now, because when this game arrives, it's gonna make some noise. Jash Retro is scheduled for release in September 2026 on Steam, with a demo available since April of this year, and the premise itself is ambitious enough to catch the eye of any beat-em-up fan, directly inspired by Double Dragon, Target Renegade, Ikari Warriors, Commando, Contra, and Golden Axe. In other words, an outright love letter to the best of 80s and 90s arcades. The story begins with a group of villains using time travel technology to cause chaos, steal, and sow discord across different points in space-time, and you control a team sent to stop them before the damage is irreversible. What caught my attention is that this time travel premise serves as the perfect excuse to justify stages in completely different settings. You can be on a modern city street one moment and in a historical war zone the next, with the narrative connecting everything throughout the campaign. It's the kind of simple script the genre has always used, but in the right hands, it works very well because it lets the gameplay speak louder. What's most impressive about Jash Retro is the decision not to limit itself to a single gameplay style. The project combines 4 distinct gameplay modes: classic side-scrolling beat-em-up in the style of Double Dragon, hack and slash, top-down shooter in the style of Ikari Warriors, and side-scroller shooter in the style of Contra, all within the same game, connected by the same story. Most interestingly, Sebastian plans to release separate versions for the first 3 game types in addition to the full bundle, giving an option for those who prefer a specific style without needing the whole package. The fact that all of this is being done by a single person running on Unreal Engine makes the project even more impressive when you get your hands on the demo. The demo, released in April 2026, already delivers the beat-em-up and top-down shooter modes, the 2 most advanced in development, giving a good idea of what the full game will be. Playing it, you run, jump, punch, fight, shoot, throw grenades, and drive vehicles. Each of these elements inherited directly from the classics that inspired the project, with that arcade feeling that modern games rarely manage to truly capture. If Marvel Cosmic Invasion reminded you that the charm of classic beat-em-ups is timeless and that a studio with a clear purpose can do a lot with a little, Jash Retro is living proof of that, only multiplied, because here, a single developer is practically building 4 classic games in one. It's the kind of indie project that deserves all the community support, not just for what it promises to deliver, but for the courage of a solo developer who clearly grew up playing Double Dragon and Contra and decided he wanted to give that feeling back to everyone. go play the demo and put it on your wish list. This is exactly the type of game made by and for those who truly love the genre. Look, I need to tell you about a game that hasn't left my head since I discovered it, and the name says it all: Dead as Disco. The demo available on Steam already boasts 98% positive reviews with over 800 reviews, which even before the full launch is an absurd number that speaks for itself. You play as Charlie Disco, a music icon betrayed by his own bandmates, the Idols, and you have one single night to confront each of them, find out who killed Disco, and reclaim everything that was stolen. The story takes place in an alternative reality that looks like something out of a 70s underground comic mixed with 80s neon aesthetics, and it has a non-linear narrative that changes depending on how you decide to confront each idol. So replay value here isn't just marketing talk, it's real. The combat system is called Beat Kune Do, and the core mechanic is simple to understand, but deep to master. You attack, dodge, and chain combos while trying to achieve perfect synchronization with the rhythm of the music playing in the scene. The more connected you are to the beat, the more fluid and devastating your combat becomes. The game literally rewards those with musical feeling. And as you defeat each idol, you unlock their musical style, learning new dances and moves that expand your repertoire in ways traditional beat-em-ups simply don't offer. What completely blew me away was discovering the infinite disco mode, an endless mode where songs connect non-stop while waves of enemies arrive synced to the BPM of each track, meaning each track completely changes enemy behavior and attack timing. And to top it all off, the game will support custom songs. You load your own tracks and fight with them playing, turning your personal playlist into a unique brawling spectacle that no other player in the world will have quite like yours. If Marvel Cosmic Invasion reminded you that a beat-em-up with soul, style, and personality is something rare and valuable, Dead as Disco goes a step further by turning the combat itself into a musical experience that is impossible to find in any other game. It doesn't have a definitive release date yet, but the demo is available on Steam right now. Go play it because this is exactly the type of game that appears once in a generation. You know when a game appears out of nowhere, made by just one person, and you're looking at the screen thinking, how is this possible? That's exactly how I felt when I discovered Acts of Blood, developed primarily by Fodral FN, a solo Indonesian developer with support from some friends under the studio Exil Team. It's a third-person beat-em-up that is brutal, stylish, and makes zero apologies to anyone. The project started as Project Condemned, heavily inspired by the movie The Raid, and evolved into one of the most impressive indie action games to appear on the radar in recent years. You take on the role of Hendra, a law student whose family was murdered by his father's business rival. He seeks justice through the proper legal channels, but the corrupt legal system closes every door. And so Hendra decides that if the law won't solve it, he'll solve it with his fists. What hooked me in the story is that the game doesn't let this pass without moral weight. As the campaign progresses, Hendra begins to question his own journey of revenge and what this path is doing to him, and this transforms what could be a shallow brawling narrative into a story that has something real to say. All of this takes place in Bandung, Indonesia, a city rarely represented in video games, with a local atmosphere that permeates every stage, every setting, and every enemy you encounter. The combat is inspired by The Raid, Sifu, Sleeping Dogs, and Batman Arkham. And when you put those four references together in a single game, the result is exactly as good as it sounds. Every hit was built to feel painful and heavy. The developer directly said the goal was to make every strike feel painful, and from the demo, you can see he achieved that. You have access to melee weapons, firearms, destructible environmental elements, parkour mechanics, and even an X-ray finisher system that makes every takedown more cinematic. It's the kind of combat that rewards those who read enemies well and think before they start punching everything. What impressed me was realizing that Axe of Blood isn't trying to be a classic-style 2D side-scrolling game. It takes the essence of the beat-em-up and puts it into a third-person camera, which gives a scale and depth of setting that games like Streets of Rage simply can't match. The environments have multiple layers, enemies surround you from all sides, and you constantly need to manage space, distance, and timing, all while the surrounding environment falls to pieces. And the demo, already available on Steam, shows that even in its current state of development, the experience already delivers much more than most indie projects in the genre promise. If Marvel Cosmic Invasion reminded you that an action game with soul, purpose, and care for combat can be memorable regardless of the budget, Axe of Blood is the definitive proof of that on an even more impressive scale, because here, a single developer is building something that rivals productions from entire studios. The game doesn't have a confirmed release date yet, but the demo is right there on Steam waiting for you, and I recommend playing it right now before the project gains the recognition it deserves and everyone starts talking about it at once. This is the kind of game you'll want to say you knew about before everyone else.
Yeah!